Last summer I went to London to visit Noel, who'd been feeling ill. And while I was there, I stayed with Chris and then had a chance to walk around the Putney Bridge area, Fulham, stop in some of the pubs and enjoy some of the good ales and ciders that they had. The next day, David took me around the city of London, which actually is only a small part of what we generally consider London. Here's the entrance, near what's called Blackfriars Station. If you look in the background of this next slide, you'll see a statue on the pub of the original Blackfriars. I guess would have been Dominicans. The city of London is about a mile square. It's its own separate entity with its own police force and its own rules and regulations. St. Paul's, of course, is one of the highlights within the area, but you can also see a number of the other buildings in London. St. Paul's is the cathedral where they do the coronations and the weddings. Like most British cathedrals, it's also memorials to the various British units that fought in the wars of the Empire. As we left the cathedral and walked out through the grounds, it was a very, very pretty afternoon. I said London is about a mile square. In the distance there, you can see the Shard, one of the new buildings that have risen in the London area. The city used to be the financial center, but now that area has sort of been overtaken by the Canary Wharf, where all of the new skyscrapers are going in. As we were walking along, we saw all these vehicles, some old, some new. We were wondering what was going on. We eventually ended up at the Guildhall, which is sort of the city hall for London, and realized that it was a historical event. Every year, the Carters come to renew their licenses. There are a lot of little chapels around the area. It's very, very pretty. In the financial center, this is the Bank of England, and next to it, with the Shard in the background, is the London Stock Exchange. London, of course, is an old Roman city, and in the city of London, you can still come upon sections of the wall. After visiting the city, I eventually moved into the Victory Services Club up in the Mayfair area near Marble Arch. And that night, I wandered around the streets of London. Here you have Regent Street. One of the things that struck me was the number of Arabs in this area. You see a lot of women in the full burqa, and people talking about the Quran and giving speeches. Hamley's is a big toy store, and these characters you might recognize were made out of Lego. In the morning, I decided to take a bus over the Imperial War Museum. In London, a bus is slow, but it's a great way to see what's going on. Here you have Trafalgar Square with St. Martin in the Fields in the background. And we're heading down the Strand towards Parliament. You see Big Ben, and here the tower from the Houses of Parliament. This is the Cenotaph, where the British have their Memorial Day ceremonies on November 11th every year. Of course, now you're down in Parliament Square, Westminster Abbey, and the Houses of Parliament. As you cross over the bridge, you can see the London Eye. It was built for the Millennium celebrations. It's a major tourist attraction, although I wasn't able to get on. The Imperial War Museum is a historical spot for all of the wars since 1900. Of course, World War I and World War II are always on display, but they'll have rotating displays. For example, this time they had a very extensive display on the Holocaust. You see equipment, you see signs, you see documents. Some of the things came from battlefields in the Pacific. Some are remnants from the European theater. And of course, wouldn't be complete without a Spitfire and a Lancaster bomber. You can imagine going over Germany sitting in that thing. And of course the Harrier, which was the savior of the British fleet when they fought in the Falklands. I came back on the bus, you look down the river, you can see the construction. Again, another view of the London Eye. The crowds began to really jump up. When I come over, there weren't that many, but it was a mob. crowd by the midday. Here's another view of the Houses of Parliament, what's looking back towards Big Ben. That's actually Westminster Hall, the oldest part of the Houses of Parliament. Unfortunately, terrorism is a continual threat, so you have the police everywhere. The famous statue of Richard in the Parliament Tower. Palace in Westminster's technical name. And here is Parliament Square looking back up the Strand, and of course its most famous inmate, Winston Churchill. That's actually Whitehall, the Center for Defense and Foreign Policy. And the last look back at the Tower at the London Eye and at the Parliament Tower. Westminster Abbey is a major tourist attraction. This time I didn't go in. And then I hopped a bus to head over to visit Noel at the retreat house where he was being cared for. It was a long trip, even though it wasn't very far in distance, because there's so much traffic, but it really gave you a chance to see all the different streets in London. These apartments on the street like that would go for hundreds of thousands of pounds. The different squares. It's a good way to see London. You get into these areas with these white marble buildings on limestone. That's sort of like upstairs, downstairs. Here's Grosvenor Square, or Grosvenor Garden, which is near the U.S. Embassy. And then into Chelsea. And then finally over to Hammersmith at the Nazareth House, where Noel was. It was run by an order of nuns that had been there since the 1800s. Noel and Chris met me. One of the things that was going on that day was a celebration for the establishment, and they had a local girls' school coming in and singing folk songs. I laughed with Noel and Chris and said it was funny that I had to come to an old folks' home in order to hear music that I enjoyed. You can imagine that the people there, many of whom were elderly, enjoyed the singing very, very much. Afterwards, the girls had a chance to move with the people. I then went over to Lily, my cousins, and her son Seamus, there with Chris. We had lunch. Later, we had dinner at a local pub on the River Thames. You get some idea of what they say when they say the Thames and Tidal River. It's a very, very nice pub, very traditional. And so that's Lily and her husband Corey and Chris, as well as Seamus. And this, unfortunately, is the last picture I have of Noel, because about 2 weeks after I left, he passed away. I took a tour out to Leeds Castle, which dates back to Tudor times, but actually only that extreme left edge is Tudor. The rest of it was added during the Victorian era. It's a beautiful spot. You get to wander around. We had a tour which got us there before the main opening, so it wasn't crowded. Later on in the day, it became very crowded. Here you can see the more modern Victorian part that was added. It's one of very, very wealthy families. It actually abuts a golf course on the other side. And here's the family coat of arms. You'll notice in this next picture, if you can see closely, it talks about the Fairfaxes. So there's actually a link to George Washington, because that's the same Fairfax that Fairfax, Virginia is named after. It's some idea of what the inside of the place was like. Much of it, as I said, was redone by this wealthy lady in the 1800s, early 1900s. Beautiful spot. As you can see, the day was perfect for sightseeing in a spot like this. After Leeds Castle, we got back on the bus and we're going to head off towards Dover. Here you see the Dover waterfront with the famous white cliffs in the background. The beach there is not sand. As you see in this next picture, it's really just all pebbles. If you look closely, besides Dover Castle, which you see on the cliff top, one of the largest castles in England, and going back to the times of Henry VIII, in the cliffs you can actually see places that have been dug in because they're honeycombed with various military tunnels, going back to the times of the Napoleonic Wars. Beautiful spot. From Dover, we headed up to Canterbury, and of course the famous Canterbury Cathedral, well known for Thomas à Becket. It's a really cool town. We wander through the streets, and the cathedral, of course, sort of marks everything no matter where you go. Beautiful building. Like the other cathedrals I've been in, when you go inside, it's just spectacular. There you have a baptismal font. Of course, Canterbury Cathedral was the site of the martyrdom of Thomas of Becket, and the chapel where he was killed is still there. It's marked by these swords. The spot where he was buried is now marked by a candle because his grave was lost. The cathedral, like many other British churches, is a home for a number of monuments, in this case to officers from the Royal East Kent Regiment. There's a special chapel that you can see there, with all the colors from the regiment, and other small chapels as you move throughout the cathedral. Very beautiful spot. And the exterior grounds, of course, very, very nice. Some work going on as they're constantly repairing and rebuilding. Then back into the town, to the old town gates, and wander down to the squares to something called the Royal Mile. And somehow I ended up in a pub. Once again, had a good ploughman's lunch and some cider, which was very, very nice. And then we're back through the bustle and onto the bus, and we head up to London, to Greenwich, where we saw the Royal Naval College. In the background here, you can see the Greenwich Observatory, where the prime meridian runs through. And then we got on a fast ferry, after looking at the Cutty Sark, and went back down to Westminster, where I got off the boat. And that completed the tour for the day.